So up to now, we have written some tests for our application. So if I come here, I can run our tests by doing Python manage.py test, and they should be able to run. If there are any issues, we should be able to identify them here. We can even run this with coverage to see like what parts of our code are tested, what parts are not tested. So we can do something like coverage manage.py test. Then we can have and coverage report. We can even see HTML by saying coverage. We can also see the version of HTML that has all our coverage statistics by doing coverage HTML, coverage run. So it's going to go ahead now and run our tests and then give us coverage of the things we've tested and the things we have not tested. The reason why we are adding tests is because we don't want our code to break on in any way. So if you're working with other people on the project, it can make it hard for you to know if their tests didn't pass before maybe they brought in a change. And there literally would not be a way for you to know if their tests passed. So what you can do to prevent like those kinds of issues, we can integrate CI tools. So what CI tools allow us to do is they check our code every time we make changes to it. So the way that you can check our code is when we push it to GitHub or any other version control system we might be using. Now there are several CI providers that provide tools that can enable us to do some checks on our application and make sure that things are fine before we add those changes to our like main application or our production application, or depending on the workflow we might be employing. So we have things like Circle CI, things like Travis CI. Most recently, we have GitHub Actions. Now I'm going to go to GitHub here, and then I go to Actions. And here, basically, there are repositories that can enable you to quickly set up a workflow for most of the common projects. We would want to have an action that should go ahead and test our code before we can merge it or before we can bring in new changes. So what you can do here, we are going to be using GitHub Actions. Now here, we need to first create a Git repository, of course. So I'm going to click here and then say new repository. So over here, now I can call this project, let's say Django. I'm going to call it Django tutorial YouTube. So for the description, I'm going to leave it empty for now. And then I'm going to just create the repository. So when it creates, we can push our code to it. So now we can copy this and push to our repository. So I'm going to go here and then paste in this. So that's going to go ahead and add this remote for this project to our local Git, and then it's going to push the code here. So when we refresh, you can see that now we have these changes pushed to our GitHub. So now if we want to set up actions, we can click on actions. Since this is a Django project, they are going to suggest for us some workflows here. So let's choose this one for creating and testing a Python application. So we're going to say set up workflow. So if we come here, you see that it's going to want to create a new file in our application. And then what it's going to be doing is here, we need to give a name to our workflow. So we're going to be changing this. So they are calling it a Python application, which is fine. Then here we define when we want to run this workflow. So here, this specifies that every time there is a push on this branch, or when there is a pull request that brings changes to this branch, then it should go ahead and trigger this workflow. So then here we have jobs. So jobs specify exactly what we want to do. So here what we want to do is build our app. So now here we specify the environment we want it to run in. So you can be able to run your application on Ubuntu, on Windows, also on Mac OS. So these run on GitHub containers. So we don't have to worry about setting up like containers or this system. So whenever this workflow is triggered, GitHub is going to avail an Ubuntu machine where our application can run. Here we have the steps. These are the steps that define exactly what we want to do. So first you can see that we use an action that already exists called checkout.v2. So this is responsible to basically put our latest code from GitHub and then run it on our container that GitHub provides. Then we say we want it to have Python. So to have Python, we also use another action that already exists. So these actions are here. If we go to GitHub/actions, so you can see that like that one for checkout, we should be able to find it real quick. So since almost every project would want to do that, there's no reason for everyone to code their own action. So we can use the one that already exists. So that's why you see the actions uses. Then here we say we want the Python version. Then after that, we can have another step to install dependencies. So after we install dependencies, we upgrade pip. So here we can run tests. If we wanted to lint, we can have another step to lint. And then we can basically like run our tests. We can report coverage to our coverage tools. and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this file. So Python app YAML is fine. So I'm going to create a pull request for it because it might fail and we don't really want it to fail. Then I'm going to click propose new file. For this pull request, I can say init GitHub build workflow. Then let's create the pull request. So when we create, you see that immediately our workflow kicks in and it starts to build our application. So right now, you notice that it's running the workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the details so we see exactly what's happening. So we'll see that now it was able to set up, but our workflow failed. So we need to correct this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to copy the branch name, the one we created. Then I'm going to go to our application. Then I'm going to fetch it. So we need to say git fetch origin, then this. So that's going to get it locally. Now we can check it out. So we can say git checkout this. Now we should be able to have the access to the new file that this pull request introduces. So that file is .github and then python app.yaml. So over here, you see that it's trying to install Freecate and then pytest and then run the requirements txt. So we don't have the requirement txt, I believe. So what we want is to first create it. So over here, we can do pip freeze, and then the requirement txt basically goes to our virtual environment and then picks all the dependencies we are using, and then it adds them to a file. So we're going to call this file requirements.txt like this. So if we freeze, you can see that over here, we have this file created and it has all the packages that our application needs to run. So going back over here, you see that here in the install dependencies, it's okay. It's going to upgrade. Then it's installing this. So we might not need to install this because if we needed them, they would already be in our virtual environment. So what we can do here is we can use pip to install them. So let's do pip node 10. Let's have pip install -r .txt like this. So we don't need the lint one. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the lint. So like this. And now here, the one for testing, we are not using PyTest. We're using the built-in unit test module. So here you can have test with unit test. So here we need to run a command that we run when we are testing. So the command we run basically is python manage.py. Then it's called test. Okay, so also, since our application is using environment variables, so things like the secret key, they are in the virtual environment. We need a way for GitHub to access them when it's running this. So to avail them, what we want to do is we want to set up something called GitHub secrets. So to set up the secrets, you want to go to your project, then you want to go to settings. So when you go to settings, down here, you will see something called secrets. So you want to click on secrets, and then over here, you can be able to add the secrets for this project. So those will basically act as your environment secret. Okay, so on secrets, what we want to say new repository secret. So here we can set up everything we have in our .env in GitHub, so GitHub can access them. So we want to go to .env, and then here we can get everything we have here and avail them in secrets. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these and have them in here. Okay, so I've gone ahead to bring in all my environment variables onto here. So now continuing in our workflow file. So over here, before we run the tests, what we want, so after the name, what we want is we need to set up the env. So the things we need from the env. So we can come over here, and then where the name starts from, we can have env. So then on the new line, I'm going to tap this one in, and then I'm going to bring in all our secrets. So these are all the secrets that I've defined over here. Now some are not here, but if we needed them, we can get them. So let's make sure we tap this one back because it should be on the same line as name. So make sure, yeah, so you want to make sure that you're careful with this YAML file. You can look up YAML syntax. You're gonna get tons of resources online. So now let's go ahead and update this. So we're gonna add commit and then push again. I'm gonna go to the actions. So you see that now we have this init build workflow. So if we click on it, so you can see that now it is running. If we click on it, we should be able to see that the steps. So it first sets up. This is like some background stuff it does. Then it checks out. So for the checkout, it goes ahead to use the checkout action, then gets our repository, installs Python, installs dependencies. So over here, you can see it installed things. and now it failed on unit test. So if we click here, we should be able to see which ones passed, which ones failed. So here we can see that they failed, and checking on the reasons. If we come here, you can see that the database is not specified. Okay, so that's because over here, if we come to over here, we didn't specify it. So we can also specify it. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go to our action, and I'm going to go to our secrets and also get the engine, because we specified it there. So we can come here and also get this DB engine and have it in our secrets. So over here, we can have DB engine, then it's gonna be this secrets, DB engine. Again, make sure our formats are good. Let's make the new push. Okay, so when you push again, it's gonna go ahead and restart the workflow build. So if you come here, I'm actually gonna click on actions. It has already failed. Incredible. There's an issue. DB port is already defined. Who defined it? Crazy. Okay, so let's retry. So let's come back here. We can see that it has restarted. It's gonna build. So starting the workflow. So now if we come back again here, you see it installs. Then now, so you see it installs, but now when it comes to running unit tests, you're going to see that now it fails. It's not able to connect to our Postgres server, and then that's why it is failing. So we need a way to tell GitHub Actions to set up Postgres and run it as a service in the background, such that our application can be built in there and tested. So what we can do in our action file, so here after we define the system it should run on, we can set up another attribute called services. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually format this one. So for services, we can say, okay, we want Postgres. Then we can define the image it should run on. Then we can define the environment variables. So since this is a Docker image, then you can go ahead and map the Postgres port to this port. So application is going to be listening on to this port. So now I can copy this port and make sure that our secrets are using that port. So I'm going to go to settings, then go to secrets. Then for the port, I'm going to update it to this 5433. Initially it was 5432. And then over here we specify some flags to make sure that our application waits for it. And for this information, this is just for the environment. It's really, we are using this environment in GitHub, so it's really not a big deal. So we can come back over here and really in this environment just reuse this. So we need to set up the DB name. So we can come like here. So here I have DB name, we change that one too. So I'm gonna update it to the one we are setting up on our Postgres password and user. So let's change those two too. So the user, the DB is GitHub action. So the user is also Postgres. So let's change that one too. So let's have it too. It's gonna be DB user, and then let's have it. Okay, so now if we run back this test, I'm gonna add and then push it again. Then let me push. So when we push, it's gonna run. And then we always want to make sure that our YAML is good. Otherwise, we're always gonna be getting issues here. So I believe it looks good. So let's check again here on our pull request. So it's running. You can see it's started. There's an in progress badge. So let's open it up a bit. So if you want to see all your actions, you can click on actions. All our actions have been failing. We haven't gotten one right. So if you click on one, then we can go to build and also try to track to see what's happening with it. So it's setting up containers. Let's see. So we see that now our test passed. It passed that step properly. So if we click on it, you can see that now our test passed properly. So yeah, that's good. So at least our tests are passing in CI, which feels good. So as it finishes, I want to talk more about GitHub Actions. Now here, I'm going to search for events that trigger workflows. Then over here, this page can open up. So over here, you will find a list of all the events that can trigger workflows in GitHub. Now you can use GitHub Actions for very many things. So almost everything that happens to your project in GitHub, it can be automated using a workflow. So from things like greeting a new contributor when they come to your organization, to things like sorting issues, to things like checking builds before we deploy to production. So you can come over here and take a look at all the things that can trigger an action. So you can find all the events that might fit your need. So now we can see here that our tests are passing, and now we can go ahead and bring in these changes to our main project. So before you bring them in, if you wanted to enforce a specific coverage to make sure that the build should fail if the coverage doesn't meet a specific threshold, then you can come back here in our test script. So where we are testing from. So here, then we are going to run this now using coverage. So you can say coverage, manage.py, coverage run, manage.py test. Then we want to say and coverage report. Then we add a flag for -- fail, then --under, then our threshold. So we say under equals. So now let's come in and say, okay, so we know that our coverage currently is 75. So if you put something like 95, let's say we wanted to make sure that all our code is at least tested to that threshold. And now we run back this one again. So I'm going to do a git add, then git push, git commit, then git push. Okay, so fast forward, you see that our tests step failed and it failed. So if we expand it, you see that it tested and then it saw that we reached on 75, but then it failed our workflow build. So it is telling us that the coverage failed and the total of 75 is less than the one we set for 95. So this is how you can set it up, especially if you have like a private repository and you don't want to pay for coverage reporting tools. So the next step I'm going to be showing you is how to use a coverage reporting tool. So we're going to be using Codecov. So Codecov analyzes your code coverage and then it can add some badges on every pull request that you want to merge in. Then it can show which files someone did test, which files someone tested. It can also fail the build if you specify that it should fail if maybe the coverage drops in one way or the other. The option to use a coverage reporting tools is what you always would want to go with in most cases. So to use this, we want to go back and set up another step over here. So you saw how we set up a step to test with unit test. So we're going to set up another step to upload this coverage to Codecov, and then we can get some analysis on all the pull requests we make. So what we can do here, we are going to have the same thing. We are going to have kind of the same step here. So I'm going to copy that and then bring it here. Then I need to make sure that our indentations are good, which I kind of miss all the time. So we have that, we have env. Then here, let's say report coverage to Codecov. Then we're going to set up the envs, of course. We need them to be able to run coverage test, to run the test. So maybe to mention, whenever we set up these builds here, they are going to be running in these steps. So when we have the step for test with unit test, it's going to first complete before this is run. So that means that here we don't really need to run this one again. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that whenever it runs this here, it goes ahead to actually create an XML format for Codecov from which Codecov can read. So over here, we can have, I'm going to remove fail under, or I'm going to keep fail under. Then let me set it to like 75 where we are. And then we are also going to now run coverage. So we're going to say coverage. You know how we said HTML and it would give us an HTML file? Here we're going to say XML. So Codecov requires us to have an XML file. The one it can analyze. So now over here, so after we specify our environment on the same line with env, then we can have users. So we're going to be using an action that already exists. So I'm actually going to bring it in here. Then let's make sure it's indented. So we're going to say users. So we're going to be using this GitHub action. So this GitHub action, you can check it out here if you want to take a look at more documentation about it. So I'm going to bring it in here. Then it's over here. So to use it, you should be able to see how you should be able to use it. So you see, we need to have a Codecov token. Let's go in Codecov and set it up. So I'm going to go to Codecov, then I'm going to log in here. I'm going to click login and then I'm going to choose GitHub. All right, so when you choose GitHub, then it's going to load the project. So when we come over here, then we want to say add new repository. So when you say add new repository, then we can choose the one we want to add. So since they don't have a search for some reason, then we want to navigate to /gh then slash the repo name. So that's here. So that's slash gh. Then the repo name is Django tutorial YouTube. So that's what we want to put here. Okay, so let's put the name. Okay, so when this now comes up, it's going to go ahead and set it up, and now it's going to give us the token. So what we can do here is we can keep the token, and let's take it to our secrets. So we can go to secrets, let's go to our project. Then we want to go to settings, then secrets. So let's set it up here, new secret. Okay, Codecov token. Let's bring it in. So let's copy this. Let's now save it. Where is it? So let's save it here. And save. Then I'm going to trigger a new build by just like making a change in the file. Let me add commit push. Okay, so let's check again. Maybe this time it's gonna build. So now you can see that our report coverage has passed. You can see everything it did under the hood. And then after, you can see that now our build passed. So if you come back to the pull request, you notice that now we have more than one check. So if we expand these checks, you see that now also Codecov was able to like run our tests. So on the next builds, it's going to be comparing them with this previous build. So now we can be sure that our things are good, and we can go ahead and merge these, bring them in. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this change. So that means that every other build we make from our application, every pull request we raise, will have to be tested. If a previous test fails, then it's going to fail, and we need to really look into how to fix those issues. If our coverage drops, it's also going to fail. And yeah, so this helps us to actually not be like, of course, it took us some time to get this file correctly, but once you set it up, you're going to be golden. It's going to save you from a bunch of errors. So to finish it up, I want to show you how you can add badges to your README to make sure that other people can see that your things are passing. So to add badges, you want to go to Actions. So this is the badge for GitHub Actions. And then what you want to do is you want to click on like you build. Then over here, you can click there, and then you see create status, badge status. So this is going to be the status of your default branch, basically your default one, which is what you want. So now you can go to your projects. I'm going to check out main. Oh, we have changes, git status. So git if. Oh, I don't care about this. So git checkout main. I'm going to force it. Then since we have since we have a new push, we can pull, and that's going to give us the changes. Then now, let me create a new branch to create a readme, so you guys see how it's going to check again. So update readme. So now we can go to our readme file, and instead of us having only this, we can have the badge to show the status of our build. Also, let's also have the coverage badge. So we can get a coverage badge by going to settings, I believe. And then here on badge, you can now get this badge here. So we want the markdown version, so you can copy this and also have it here and save. So you see it's 75, and then we can increase it anytime we are going to be able to see what's going on. So let's commit this. So git add commit, not got, add status badges. Okay, so let's push it. So we're gonna be pushing it. Okay, so when we push, you can go ahead and make a pull request real quick. I'm gonna click create. So it's gonna go ahead and now make our checks again. So you can see the check has started again. And yeah. And also with GitHub, you can set up a way to not even enable the merge button if things have failed. So there's much more you can do in here. So let's wait for it to pass. If it doesn't pass, then we can go ahead and fix the things it wants us to fix. So I always look at CI as like a saver, like a time saver, in ways that it's going to be able to save you from a bunch of issues from the server if you take time to really set up your workflow, set up your testing environment, and test all the code that you write. And pretty much for any serious application, guys, please, 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 always make sure you test, always make sure you set up a CI, because other than that, you're going to be finding yourself in problems which you could have avoided if you took time to set these things up. So it looks like our things are still running and they are finishing now and things are passing. So if you come back to the pull request, we should be able to see that now we have this tick success, and we should be happy about our new changes, making sure. So here you can see, okay, there was nothing that was added. If it was, this would fail. If something really, so if we added some code that needed to be tested, this would fail and we need to really test it. So here, let's merge these changes, and yeah. So if you come to our project, you can see that we have this. So yeah, so you might be wondering why it's 75. So I'm going to be taking time to really write other tests to make sure it is up. So you guys can see how I write tests for almost everything on there. And maybe you can learn a thing or two. So that's going to do it for this video. So this video was quite a long one, but I hope you sticked around and I hope you learned a little something. I would want to hear what you do with GitHub Actions, and I hope this can actually improve your future workflows or your current workflow. I'll talk to you in the next video. Thanks for watching.